Welcome to Lemonade Learning, a refreshing look at learning today. We serve up high impact practical strategies alongside honest and energizing stories to help educators.
Make the most of your moments, lead and learn with purpose, and craft lifetime lemonade from the sweets and sours of education. Join us for a glass.
Hey everybody, it's Bree.
And Lainey.
We are super excited for today's guest. So we have Dennis Matthew with us, and you may have heard of him as a children's author. He is a speech pathologist from Mustang, Oklahoma, works specifically with elementary kiddos. But we were having a little bit of a conversation off camera, and we decided we just had to push record so that we could kind of get things going because one of the things that we were just talking through is that while a lot of these books seemingly are have an elementary focus, as a secondary teacher, I utilized a lot of picture books, a lot of books in general, and specifically actually used one of Dennis's books. And so let's talk about that. I'm super excited for you to be on with us. I'm going to let you kind of finish out that introduction because I think it might be a little bit weird for me to divulge some of your more personal titles that you feel are a little bit probably the ones that we should have led with. But Dennis, without further ado, I'm going to let you take it.
Man, first off, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a good sign when the host says, "Oh gosh, we should have recorded that," and you just jump in and just no intros. Let's just dive in. That's always a good sign. Yeah, I always like to insert husband and father first because I feel like my girls, like, man, if it wasn't for them, I don't know where my life would be headed, what direction I'd be going in, and they're so much of an inspiration for even the books that I write. So first and foremost, I'm a husband and father. But yes, for over a decade, I've been a speech pathologist now, working in the special services, special education domain. And here, about 2 to 3 years ago, I took a risk and decided to be a children's author, and it has really kicked open a lot of doors for me. It's given me the blessing of meeting amazing human beings like you. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Now we can't break protocol too much because, we have our patterns that we love. And so one of them is to start off with sweet and sour. So would you indulge us in the sweet and sour in your life right now, Dennis?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got sweet and sours. I feel like all the sweetness that's in my life started with something sour because it forced me to do the work up front till I saw the results later. I always love the analogy of a farmer who has to go sow seed and do the work till he or she can see harvest. And it's not enough to just, walk out on your property and throw some seed and say, all right, ground, do your work. I'll see harvest in a few months. No, you got to position the seed, work the ground, make sure you give it good context, good culture, good environment. And so, just like the farmer has to do a work up front, I feel like for all the sweetness that I've seen in my life over, gosh, I'm 30. I just turned 39. All through 39 years, I feel like I had to do work up front to see beauty, and that's good. That works for me. So sweet. I'll start with sour and then sweet as far as my authorship's concerned. I was in Boston. I told you, I'm going into my 15th year being a speech therapist. Never in my life, like in that one season when I lived in Boston, had I had a hard time finding work as a speech pathologist. It was 2016, 2017. Man, I was sending my resumes left and right. Just could not find a job. And I just wondered to myself, I know I'm good at what I do. I've never had a hard time finding work, but I just could not. And so there was a 2 to 3 month window where all I was doing was just sitting home and sending resumes out. And as a man, as a husband, as a provider, it made we love having purpose. Men do, and so waking up in the morning and just not knowing, gosh, what's my day gonna look like this morning or the next morning or the morning after that. That's what kind of forced me to open my laptop and go, you know what, maybe this is when I need to write that story I've had in my mind since my student teaching year. And so I just started, opened my laptop and started typing the words. Bello the cello was thrilled about his first day of school. And that story was born in pain. And I had no idea that it would become what it has become today. I've sold over 10,000 copies of Bello now, 2 years into the journey, and I'm at my third book. So that's a sour that then just grew out into this sweetness that has basically given me my second full time gig. So that's a sour and sweet that I want to share as far as my authorship's concerned.
Bree, that was kind of giving me chills because I was like, oh, that's kind of like and I wrote down story born in pain. And really Lemonade Learning for me was something that was born in pain that has brought me so much joy. And also you were talking about having a purpose and doing the work. And that's like, Bree and I, this is not a monetized podcast. This is just our passion project. But for me, it gives me purpose. I won't speak for Bree, but for me, it gives me purpose and it makes me want to do the work.
Yeah, I absolutely I agree. And the agriculture side of me was definitely identifying with what you were talking about. My father grew up in the wheat fields of Oklahoma, so I certainly know all about waving the wheat and doing all that good stuff. But one of the things that I clung to this last year was the word cultivate, and how cultivate requires us to get in there, get really messy and get really dirty before we can, you have to work that soil. And then the other part that comes with that is you have to apply some fertilizer. And let's just say that fertilizer, usually another word for that is is the G-rated version is poop, right? And so sometimes you got to get through the poop before you can get this beautiful thing that is very rewarding and comes out to that. And so I think that it is so important that in this time of toxic positivity and this overwhelming need for us to either be like all on fire or totally falling apart, like we need to understand that it takes both of them really to come together in order for us to get this beautiful thing that we want to have. And so I appreciate that so much, and just, all the things that were going through my mind when you were sharing that is like from a cooking standpoint, right? You add sweetness when you need it to be a little bit more sour, you add sour or saltiness when you need it to be a little bit more sweet. And so we're always needing that, like some seemingly juxtaposed contradictions, but they are both so important in order to get to this beautiful thing that we're really trying to get to. So I'm so excited for you to kind of unpack some of these things. And thank you for sharing with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I just want to just say something really quickly. And that is, I really related when you were talking about how you had this time and you wanted that purpose. So you started writing. And so Bree can vouch for me on this, that pre-pandemic, I did not devote enough time to writing, and that I have in this time period written like probably in the last 16 months more than I've written my entire life. It has been so cathartic for me that as I'm working through things, that's kind of been my way of processing. And so I just really kind of thought that was interesting. And then again, going back to like the doing the work, having that purpose and doing the work, but it's not like that I've been journaling and keeping it to myself. I have been sharing it with as wide an audience as I can get. Whereas I used to be pretty like close to the vest. I don't know if this is good enough to share. And so I wondered if maybe you could kind of share how you made that jump from like, yeah, I can do this, I can pour my heart into it, to I'm going to put it out for the world. Like, was that an easy thing to do? Or was that something you had to work? Well, for listeners, he is shaking his head kind of vigorously.
Yeah. So because again, necessity. So for me, I'll go back to the inception of Bello if it's okay. And there are parallels all through the journey. Once my story was written, right? Once I had my very rough draft on a Word doc on a laptop, I was like, okay, now what? I have no idea who to contact. And so it made me feel very nervous, and it was a risk that I was taking, but it was the alternative was to continue doing what I was doing, which was not working, which was sending resumes out. Now, it did not mean that I was not expecting a call back on those resumes. It wasn't that I was going to quit doing what I was doing. I was just going to do one more thing hoping that something will hit, right? So when I was talking to a teacher this morning, and she's a teacher, she's a, I want to say a second or third grade instructor. She has just launched out her first new book, and she called me and she was like, give me some tips. One of the tips that I gave her was cast your net wide. You never know what will hit, but either you're gonna catch a bass, and that's gonna be a big win, but don't give up on the minnows. Like, because you're at the very outset of your journey, you want to get as many wins as possible because they're moral victories, and then two, it'll kind of push the momentum forward, right? So for me, I was doing what I knew to do, which was send resumes for my that job that I went to school for 7 years. But now that I had a story ready, and for me, urgency was big. I needed to bring, now living in Massachusetts, anybody will tell you, is super expensive. And so I was like, man, I know I need to bring any kind of income I possibly can to support my family. Well, a typed up Word document of a very rough manuscript was not going to do that. I had no background in writing. I knew that I needed a writing coach. I don't know writing coach. So I got on Google, writing coach, just Googled it, writing coach. And the first company that popped up was a company out in New York, right by night, saw a phone number, picked up my phone, just called them. And a lady named Janie answered. I was like, hi, Janie, this call's super random. I'm Dennis. I'm an educator from Massachusetts. I need a writing coach. And it was like I needed to take the first risk for the next dominoes kind of fall. Within the 2 weeks, well, the first thing she said was, email your manuscript away. And I was like, I'm not a professional writer. But what if the story's really good and somebody steals it, right? So like all of those fears, but the alternative for me was to go back to closing my laptop, keep sending resumes. I was like, you know what? The old thing that I've been doing does not work for me. I need discomfort. So I befriended discomfort. I embraced discomfort, and I was like, discomfort will bring me to a new place of comfort. Whatever that new place of comfort is, I'll see it in the future. But what I've been doing is not working. And so just started saying yes to any opportunity that came. Long story short, a writing coach signed me up. He helped me make Bello what it is today. And then he was like, hey, dude, I'm a brand new publisher. I'm an independent publisher. I'd love to take the story to the world. Oh, and he said, but you got to do all your marketing and selling and all that. I'll put it to the world. And I have always been gifted with the knack of connection. I'm good at connecting with people, drawing them in with a conversation, staying engaged. And I was like, I think I can do marketing. I think I can do that piece because I had done it in other domains. Once the book was published, man, I just went to work. And so I set my bar really low. I was like, Dennis, this is a new area for you. I hope I'm not boring you guys with my story.
No. No, in fact, I'm totally connecting because I'm just laughing, and Bree will probably laugh at me before this, but it's like it took me 7 years to get a book out, and I had co-authors for the last 3 years of it. And it's like so I don't want to scare anyone, and I want to hear the rest of your stories, but I would just say that for me, probably what I didn't anticipate was the after the book goes to print part of the job. Like that.
Yes.
I was very naive about that.
Yes. And man, if you love to work, man, opportunities will blossom. A lot of times I think we do a little bit, and then, we get a no or a door shut in our face, and fear takes over, and we're like, okay, maybe this is not worth it. Let me just go back to what I was doing, right? So anyway, so I set the bar. The book was published December of 2018, like way towards the end of December 2018. You might as well call it beginning of 2019. So I set my goal real low. And around this time, guess what? One of those resumes that I sent out, they responded and they said, okay, come on in for an interview, got a job. Okay, so I'm so glad now that while I was sending resumes that I also pursued this book thing. So the book got published. Now I have a day job, and I'm also doing this book thing. And I set my goal real low. I was like, if I sell 300 books in 2019, I'll call it good, and I'll move on to the next book, i.e. my wild first day of school. Okay, so I was like, 300 books is my goal for the entire year. And I remember telling my wife, and my wife was like, I think you will hit that. And my wife is so good. She said, I think you'll hit that in the first month. I was like, no way. So here's what I did on Facebook. I remember when the artist gave me concept art for Bello, I just put it out there. I just said, hey, FYI world, I'm writing a book, and about 400 people liked it, and da 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 da. I was like, okay, maybe there's some excitement here. Once the book got published, I made sure that I reached out to every single one of those 400 people saying, guess what? I know you were super excited that my book was coming. It's out. I know you're going to buy it. Guess what? I did hit that 300. Wife said 300 in the first month, hit the 300 in the first 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, good for you.
And I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. I mean, I'm feeling the undercurrent, right?
Yeah.
So as educators, as parents, as husbands, as wives, right? I think a lot of times we get so caught up in the noise, the just going through the motions, right? I mean, I'll take it back to being in a school. Last year, man, pandemic year, it was all about, it was, this week we're teaching in person. Next week it's virtual. Next week, so it's so easy in that kind of a ever-changing environment to just keep going with whatever's coming next. But always, I want to encourage everybody listening to always listen to that still small voice, your discernment, your intuition, whatever you call it, right? So when I hit that 300 in the first 2 weeks, something told me, dude, maybe there's something here. I could have, according to my formula, that I had enough to move on to the next book, right? My goal was 300, move on, bro. But something was calling for more, and I was like, all right. On Facebook, I forget her name. She was like this teacher that I was connecting with, because on Facebook I started connecting with educators, just messaging superintendents, principals, anybody that will listen, saying, I'm an educator out of Massachusetts, but a brand new children's author as well. Would you love to take a look at my book? Anybody that said yes, I was willing to send them my PDF, take a look at my book, take it from there. One educator responded and said, do you have a PLN? Are you part of a PLN? And I went, what's the admission fee? Do I have to is there an annual fee?
Are there regular meetings?
And she was like, no. Professional Learning Network. You got to jump on Twitter and be a part of it. I was like, nah, man. Facebook works for me. I don't want to be a part of Twitter, right? She was like, okay. I was like, all right, door is here. Do I open? So got on Twitter. Oh my gosh, just blew up my connections. So long story short, on a personal side of things, we were also leaving Massachusetts. Baby girl was born February of 2019. We decided to leave Massachusetts, move to Oklahoma, i.e., I cannot rely on what I've done for the last 14 years, which is go from school year to school year to school year. Our transition was at the end of one school year, and it was before or after the school year here in Oklahoma started. So I could not sign a new contract with the school district. And I was like, how am I going to support my family? Long story short, all of 2019, that 2019-2020 year, about 85 schools invited me to come do author visits. That was,
wow.
Just Twitter and Facebook blew up. Then the pandemic happened. Everything got shut down.
Yeah.
It was my next discomfort level.
Yeah.
And it was up to me to either shrink back. Mustang schools opened up and said, we would love to have you. Come on. I had to make the decision. Do I go back to my old life of just being, which is a great life, being a full-time speech therapist, right? Or is there discomfort that I need to push through here? So school shut down. I can't do my in-person author visits. I was like, okay, will schools be interested in virtual author visits?
Yes.
The last pandemic year, I think I did around 80 virtual author visits.
I love it.
So why share my story like that? When discomfort hits us, not just as children's authors, my gosh, discomfort waits for us, I feel like, in any chapter of life, right? Mm-hmm. If we can push through it, not alone, but with, for me, it was my wife. It was people that were moral support, emotional support. Keep going, dude. You're doing a great work. Those words of affirmation that kept coming my way. I pushed through the discomfort, and I have not been disappointed so far. Man, I can keep talking about my story.
Well, so I really quickly want to jump in and say something, and then I'm sure Bree has lots to add to this, but I just want to say, I think this has been a theme that's come up on the show before. Not everyone needs to write a book. Not everyone needs to produce a podcast. And Dr. Will has always said, like, I'm not writing a book. I did a documentary. I will do documentaries. So I think it's so important that we appreciate that the goal is to put our work out there as part of how we share and grow. and it does not have to look the same for everyone, right? And so I love how you're sharing how you're doing it through writing. You know, obviously Bree and I are doing it through this podcast, and we have other ways of doing it too. But I think the message to whatever your role in education is that you're doing great things and you need to put it out there for other people to learn from as well. And so I don't know, Bree, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think, we certainly talk a big talk in education about multimodality and lots of different ways to demonstrate your learning and all these different things, all these different pathways. But then whenever, I guess we as adults seem to believe that whenever you turn 18 and I guess you're supposed to stop eating like Totino's frozen pizzas and, believing that there's lots of different ways to do things. And, that's one of those pieces that I think is a challenge in education, because we do like a right way. We want to be able to have that, rubric, that mastery, that great scale, right? And so it becomes a little bit of a challenge when we look to people that we, look up to, that we find successful, and we realize that our pathway might not be the same as their pathway. And it just, I'm reading a book right now called The Practice by Seth Godin. And one of the things in there he talks about is the power of your voice, and how, and it was very much like what you were saying, Dennis, where it's like, you can lean into the power of your voice, or you can lean away, right? So like the alternative is that you don't say anything, which is more torturous, truly, than saying something and being told that it's not the right thing. So, it kind of goes into all of the different ways that we push people away by taking away their voice. And so we need to not be afraid to lean into that it really truly is our greatest opportunity to share that voice and what that means with it, our experiences and all that kind of stuff. And so I really am so happy that you shared your story with us, because I think there's so many things to learn as we go through. And I feel like it very closely mirrors that learner's journey, right? Like you persevered, you looked at something that you had never done before, right? Like you 7 years of school, man, you had like everything under control. You knew your stuff, you passed your exams, you were good at what you did. And now all of a sudden you're like, but I want to learn this other thing, and I'm not quite sure how to do it. And I don't even know that I'm really great at it yet, but I want to learn. And, that's the most vulnerable that we can ever be as human beings, in my opinion, is to say, I'm ready to learn and I don't have the answers. And, you're really leaning on someone to guide you in a way that you don't know how it's going to turn out, right? Like, just like you said, like, you're reaching out to these people and they're asking you, hey, send me your stuff. And you're like, oh, should I not? Is this a bad thing? Is this a good thing? Like, all of those trust issues, all of our human emotions start coming in. And it really is that point where, especially as adults, we kind of think we have our scene under control, and we think that we're past that learning phase. And we're really, really not. We're always taking it on and kind of moving through things. So,
one reason I think, can I say something real quick?
Please.
One reason I think as adults we stop taking risks is because, well, let me kind of put it this way: who can you think of that is willing to jump and take risks? I think of my 2-year-old daughter, right? So going back to what Bree, you were saying, as we grow older, like, we lose the child in us, and it's super important to become mature, obviously, as you grow older, but not lose that simple, innocent, colorful, color outside the lines view of life. I think that's where joy lives. And a lot of times and there's nothing wrong with mastery and rubric and formula. I mean, there's a formula to everything that I've done, but I've had to go look for the formula after the fact. I feel like success has happened when I've just lived And then when people says, what are 5 things you've done that worked? I was like, whoa, let me think about the last 2 years. Oh yeah, I can think of 5 things I did, as opposed to let me first come up with 5 things and then generate success, right? So I think as adults, as educators, right, a lot of times we get into education to impact children, but at the same time we've lost the child in us, and we wonder, well, why am I not reaching my kids? Why am I not seeing results? Why am I why does it look like I'm not making a difference? Maybe the child in your room doesn't feel like they can connect with you because you have left the child in you back wherever. So I always, by the grace of God, I always try to stay in touch with the child in me, that young Dennis Matthew who loved to play in the dirt. And, you know, I could never color within the lines going through elementary school. Never. Like, I mean, oh my gosh, like color within the lines, Dennis. But I have to be very thankful for my parents who always encouraged me to just do me. I am passing that on to my daughter. Literally this morning, she's scared of bugs. She like, you know, and there was a big green bug sitting on our back porch. I picked it up and she was like, Dada, no, Dada, no. And I was like, no, he's just hanging out. And then she was like, no, I'm scared. So I asked her, do you want to touch him? And, you know, it's just this gentle, big, bright green bug. And she took a chance and she touched his back wing. And I made a mental note to myself, this is an aha moment. I didn't like all out celebrate it because I thought I would like startle her. But for her, she pushed through discomfort as a 2-year-old and tried something new. That needs to live in us into our, like all of our lives, right? We say goodbye to those things. And as soon as we get, you know, our little classroom and our little roster and our little house with the white fence and the dog and the marriage and the kids, we just get status quo and we just want to cruise, right? Which is fine, but we stop growing. And so my suggestion to my brothers and sisters in education is tap into joy. Do your day job like you're supposed to. Follow the rubric, follow your drumbeat, but also, you know, go to that place in you where you are a child and bring joy into the room. I have an analogy. I'm big on analogies. I'm thinking of this, man, I'm looking at this window right behind this, you know, behind the laptop, there's a big window, and I'm looking at my neighbor's house. It looks so pretty, right? Nothing's messy. Everything's like manicured and looks perfect. But I'm sure there's a lot of joy in that backyard.
Yeah.
Where things are not so proper and it's messy, and there's probably a good garden back there, and there's dirt and there's shovel. That's where joy lives. And so I think vulnerability is inviting people to come into your backyard and see, this is where my joy lives. And the more you can connect with where my joy lives, you're also getting to know me. So for my students, right, I often let them connect in that backyard, which what I mean by that is, did you know, Joe, that I'm an author, and just like you are working on your speech sounds and that's hard for you, but you're still working through it. Mr. Matthew's believe it or not, even though he's an author, Mr. Matthew's not a big fan of writing, and he has to work through his writing to make a story. But that's also where beauty lives, right? And so I hope that analogy made sense.
Yes.
It's vulnerability. That's what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is not just exposing the yuck and the pain, but it's also those beautiful things that you're scared to show the world, right? Because what if I get judged? Or Lainey, like you were talking about, I kept my writing private, but now I'm generating courage to show the world. That is your backyard where so much beauty is. Things might not look proper, but when we get to meet that Lainey, it's like, oh, this is this person? Okay, she's not just Mrs. So-and-so that comes and teaches 25 kids and gets in her car and goes home, right? But when we show that vulnerability, that backyard where all the joy lives to our students, they open up to us. They also show vulnerability. Oh, Mr. Dennis Matthew is not just a speech therapist who comes and works on his R's and S's. He wants to talk about his daughter, and he wants to talk about, you know, his wife, how she's a lawyer, and how he lived in India, and how he lived in the UAE. Kids want to know that, right? That's where that shared humanity makes a spark, and this is where it's brought me the biggest win. All of a sudden, that child goes home and says, Mr. Matthew said he lived in India. Mr. Matthew said that he lived in the UAE. Mr. Matthew has a 2.5-year-old. He has a little dog named Calvin. That's my backyard. I share that with my kiddos. And all of a sudden, I'm connecting with dads and moms. And Mr. Matthew is no longer just their child's speech therapist. I become the extension of their family, right? So somebody asked on Twitter, what was the biggest win for you in the last pandemic year? For me, I felt like I really got close with my families, and connection with families, letting that mom who's trying to virtual teach from home saying, hey, listen, you're not in this alone. I know this is very hard. I know you're trying to do your job from home and be mom. I'm here for you. You let me know how I can also be a resource, right? Connection with parents. But that only happened because I was doing the hard work of being vulnerable with my kiddos and connecting on a human level with Joey, who's working on his R, or Susie, who feels like she can't say her S's correctly. Like teaching my children, it's bigger than whatever you're working on here in my room. Okay, I'm Mr. Matthews, interested in who you are as a whole person. I said a lot there, but
no, so I just want to tag on with something that I'm making a connection as you're talking. So I've been in education for almost 25 years. And then about 15 years ago, I also got involved in the online learning world. And one of the first things that I was taught about is how to humanize the online classroom, which is very important. Absolutely. But what I think we might be reflecting on, and even we had Yuritsa Vijalba on, she was the kickoff for our season 2. And she talked about how, that black screen that you're seeing on Zoom, that was there before we ever used Zoom. Like we never always saw our kids, right? And so I think that what I'm kind of processing as you're talking is like, we need to make sure we're always humanizing learning and that we're making those connections. It's not just about when we're in the online space or when we're doing the virtual, right? Like you're being super intentional when you're Zooming with your families. And we have to be as intentional and as relentless when we're in person. We can't take for granted proximity as connection and closeness, right? And so I think, like, for me, that's something I'm going to be way more intentional with moving forward.
That concept of connection and that concept of perspective, learning about each other, because when we learn about each other, then that allows us to learn about the content, right? Like that's what we as humans offer. We have this information, i.e. content, and we only can provide it when there's a true connection. If there's not a connection, you could be pushing that content out there and nobody's listening to it whatsoever, right? Like, and it doesn't matter what that content is. It's funny, I was watching a video with a friend. She was over here the other day, and it was a tutorial type video, but it was so typically tutorial type video, right? Like it was like 7,000 numbers like thrown at you all at one time, and like all this stuff where it was like both of us looked at each other and we were like, yeah, no, like, because all that is just giving you content with no context, right? Like no engagement, no connection, no, hey, this is where you want to go with this. And, I think about in my learning experience, like when I was a student, when I am learning from other people, it doesn't have to be something that I am deeply interested in. I don't have to care about the content if there is a connection and context that make me interested in the content, right? So like, how many times did you have a teacher that like, you were like, oh, this is the most boring content ever, but you loved being in their class because they brought it to life, right? They shared all of these different stories or connection points into that. And, I think that is so important as we move into this. And, it also had me thinking when you were talking about using these books, and, we were talking earlier before we started recording about how do we use these in class and why would you use them and all of these different pieces, because as educators, we know we're not just pulling a book off of the shelf and reading it just to read it, right? Like that can happen. And that's certainly, that's independent reading. That's, we're not saying that every single thing has to have a content standard connected to it, but guess what? It pretty much always does. Like there's almost always something that we can connect to it, whether it's, creating some type of fluency or some type of awareness or any of that in there. And so, I kind of wanted to move the conversation a little bit to that way of like, you used all of these connections to create these books. How are you connecting content into context, and what are you doing now that you've written these books, you've shared, you're doing these author visits, you're working with classes, you're doing all this kind of stuff. How is that coming into your world? Like, obviously it's great for you to get to share your story, but it's not just a, hey, go buy my book for $12.95. You can have this too, right? Like, what's your intention behind sharing that? Like, as an author, what are you getting out of that whenever you get to meet with that class and read your story and kind of go through those motions?
Yeah, a couple of things I get asked is I'll by students, what is your mission as an author? What's your philosophy as an author? Like, what is your goal? And I always say, I write to speak to the underdog in the classroom. So there is a child that does not feel seen. In every classroom, there is a child that does not feel seen, and it may not even be the teacher's fault. And the reason I write to the underdog in the classroom is because Dennis Matthew was the underdog in the classroom. To this day, I remember, my gosh, the reason why it's called my wild first day of school is because my first day of school was wild. I remember standing on the front porch of the school, bawling my eyes out. Dad's got to go to work, and Dad's like, baby, I'm not leaving you. I'll come back and pick you up. But what do I know, right? As a pre-K kid, I'm thinking, and this isn't the UAE, by the way. So context, right? Middle East. And so I thought I was being left at a front porch. So that child that does not feel seen, I write to talk to that child. And so during author visits, I'll always say, hey, remember Bello? So in Bello the Cello, where I went for inspiration for Bello is Mr. Matthew's childhood story. And so then after, reading the story, making a presentation, I'll connect with the kiddos and I'll ask them, when was a time that you felt nervous or anxious like Bello did? Well, because Bello's first day, Miss Melody asks, I want to go around the room. I want you to say your name and sing your song. And the words of the book say, Bello wrinkled his brows, he twisted his lips. He didn't know what kind of song he would sing because all of a sudden he was put in the spot. He had no time to prepare. And how did he feel? And his facial expression in the book says it. So I'll ask the room, was there ever a time where you felt like your tummy got in knots, where you were put on the spot and you didn't feel prepared for the moment, and hands will go up, right? And I invite vulnerable, and I'll even put my story out there. You guys, I remember the first day my dad dropped me off at school. I thought I was being abandoned, but I was not. I just didn't know. Right, and I'll talk about community because Miss Melody was nurturing in the classroom, gave Bello his chance to shine, but also gave him time to prepare. There's Mr. Moon that comes along in Bello the Cello and says, Bello, you can do this. And so I'll often say in my life, Mr. Moon for me was my wife. She's the one that encouraged me. We talk about encouragement. What is encouragement? It means to lift somebody up. So social emotional learning, working through trauma and conflict is like a big rhythm to which I beat my drum, because like I want to, as an author, as a father, as a husband, as an educator, I want to live at that address because, it's super important. And I think the beautiful thing I've seen in education this last year is that we've all realized, you know what, let's just cut the poo-poo and let's just be real with each other. If I need help, I'm not going to pretend like I don't need help. I'm going to go across the hallway and say, Miss McKenzie, I need help. I didn't have time to plan this week. I need 3 things that I can do this weekend. Free Sonic drink on me, sister. Or I will do planning for you next. Reach out for help and don't suffer in silence. It's really changed as we pass the hallway saying, hey, how you doing, to how you doing? Like, how you really doing, right? Day 1 at my new school here in Mustang, I remember just passing a teacher and she's just bawling her eyes out. I was a brand new employee. And I'm the only dude in my building too. And so the 25 women or whatever that I work with, they're my sisters, man. They're my family. And so this was my day 1. And I'm just walking down the hallway and I see a teacher who was a mother just bawling her eyes out as she's walking up. I just went up to her and just said, I got to give you a hug. You're crying. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to give you a hug. She was like, okay. And I just bear hugged her. Right? Later on, I was like, I don't know what your rules are about personal space, but I saw you crying. I had to give you a hug. And she was like, that's perfectly fine. I needed one. So it has forced us to just be real with each other. So that authenticity, being vulnerable is something that I really promote in my content. That's a big mission of mine. So social, when I speak to educators and I say, would love to come to your school, I always say, listen, I'm not just a, just an author who comes and just reads a book. I'm big on connection. Talking about being a speech pathologist, vocabulary enrichment is very big to me. And so in my children's books, I intentionally put those 25-cent words that are big. And in author presentations, children will raise their hand up and they'll say, what does the word prestigious mean? I don't think I've heard of that before. Well, let me break it down for you, sir. So that's also another thing I weave into my book. So speech pathology has really informed my writing because I don't write wafer-thin stories. I give depth. Another mission of mine is to really give teachers curriculum content for the classroom. So a lot of teachers will create worksheets based, I shouldn't say worksheets, we're going away from worksheets, but facilitating, accompanying, complementing content for the classroom. We read about Bello. Why did he have a bad first day? How, just like Bello discovered his song, how are you discovering your song? What is your song? Who is helping you find your song? All of those questions.
So I want to ask Bree, because she has used one of your books with her students. And so I just want to say really quickly that I went from teaching kindergarten to 6th grade and then back to 1st grade. And that juxtaposition really taught me how we have to, with real intention, like my own personal children I've been reading chapter books to them since they were really, really young, like preschool, toddler. And I'm not going to stop reading picture books to them when they hit adolescence either. Like, I think we have to be really intentional that we appreciate that our young ones can handle the chapter books and the longer readings, and our older ones will find value in the richness of a chapter book as well. So I don't know, Bree, sorry to put you on the spot, but I just was kind of curious since you literally used, and I'm literally using literally correctly, you literally used one of his books with your adolescent students. Like, how did that go? And any tips that you have to share?
We would take these stories and, in the time that it would take me to read a 20-page short, 20-page picture book or a 60-page picture book. And sometimes they didn't even have, sometimes we are literally just examining the pictures. What is it telling us? Why is it looking at it this way? What are these experiences that they're coming at? Why is it so scary to go to some place when you've never been there before? Kind of like you were saying, Dennis, like, how many of you have ever been in this? What comes up in your mind? Do you remember the first time that your parents dropped you off somewhere? What went through your mind? What song illustrates that to you? All these different pieces. And it really helps solidify the learning for kids and for people. Like, I still do a lot of picture books, if you will, in professional learning. Like, I love to kick off innovation conversations using Ish from Peter Reynolds. Like, I love, because we all have the same emotions within us, regardless of what age we are, right? Like we all know that you can be 70 years old and be afraid to walk into a new place, right? Like, you can be 7 and be afraid to walk into the new place. So, specifically, going back to what I did with the book. So I used My Wild First Day. And I've done it in several different situations. We talked about how My Wild First Day is kind of a mishmash of different things, right? Like, it's the animals are made of different, it's not just a bird. It's not just, and so we talked about how you don't have to fit into one box. How you can have this characteristic over here and this characteristic over here. And you don't have to be the tough guy because you play football. You can be somebody who, you can play football and you can play the flute and you can write poetry and you can go rope cattle in the afternoon. Like, you can be all of these things, and that makes you who you are. And you shouldn't feel like, nope, I'm a snake, and this is what a snake looks like, and that's all it is. And so it was a really great way for us to introduce ourselves. We used it in some of the things that I always had my kiddos do was, they had to identify a theme song for the coming year of like what they wanted based upon what they wanted to achieve that year. And sometimes, these are 8th graders, 9th graders, their goal for the year might be to get a 6-pack. Okay, so then what's your theme song to go along with that, right? Like it didn't have to, I never limited it to an academic goal or anything like that. But I wanted them to see like how we can find those spider webs of connection in all of it that we do. Like I really wanted them to understand that when we say walk, when we say talk the talk and walk the walk, like this is what we mean. And our practice and our beliefs and our practice have to match up. And so that was a big thing for us in doing that. So from a secondary perspective, that was a big way that I use those points. But yeah.
Love it. We heard it here, folks. These books are not just for elementary. And so hit Brie up if you want more ideas, because she loves, and I love to talk about it too, but she really loves to dig deep on this. So I know we have to start to wrap up, but Dennis, I just wanted to ask you if there's any like last thoughts that you wanted to share. And I want to make sure we get all your ways to connect, what are your social handles and all that stuff. But any final thoughts as we're moving forward? My hope, I'll just put it out there for you. I hope you get to keep doing the virtual book tour, because sometimes it's just not possible to get in person everywhere. And so for you to be able to Zoom in or whatever tool you want to use to get in, I just love that you get to reach more kids that way and interact with them. So
Yeah, I'm looking to connect. A crazy dream of mine is I want my book. I want to do a virtual author visit or in-person visit in every state of the country, at least one. I've reached over in the last 2.5 years. I've reached over 120 schools. I think I've lost track of the math, somewhere between 70 and 80,000 students. Just reached a mass number, but still not in every state. I haven't reached out to. I haven't connected with Alaska. Just so many kids out there.
Oh, I've got someone for you in Alaska.
Oh, good deal. Let's make it happen. So yeah, I want to connect with educators all across the country. That's a big dream of mine. You're not going to get just to read aloud, but I'm going to bring my faithful guitar on. I'm going to jam out.
I was going to say, so you've also released an album, right? Like
Yeah,
you've also released
yeah.
You're my wild first date. Like you got a lot of animals within you, my friend.
There's a lot going on in here, and so like when the pandemic happened and everything shut down, that's one thing I accomplished. I just got to songwriting and an album came out, and it has really enriched the author visit. So and I bring guests on with Bello the Cello. I bring a cellist on, and they play for the so when I reach out to my rural schools that farming communities and whatnot, no judgment against any community, but some communities have not been exposed to classical music. So I'm all about those experiences that you talked about, Brie. I want to give a well-rounded, immersive, enriching experience to schools. And I'm living my dream. I often have to pinch myself and ask myself, is this really happening? So I want to connect with educators out there. And dear educators, I love you guys. I want to my crazy analogy of living in your backyard where your joy is. Don't just do what's methodical and mechanical. Do it, knock it out of the park, but go back to being a child. Go back to coloring outside the line, so to speak, because I think that's where joy and that's where creativity lives. And so that bring that creativity into the classroom, that innovation. Thank you, friends, for having me on this platform.
So happy.
I wanted to connect with y'all for a minute, and finally, when I connected with Brie, I was like, "Oh my gosh, she sees me!"
Yeah, she sees you. You've been on the radar for so long, and like I said, I was so excited. I don't want to let you go without. Can you? You've got 3 books. Not to put you on the spot, can you say like maybe just a little blurb about each one of them, just so people kind of know the differences? So, Bello the Cello is your first. So tell us, give us the super duper uber Twitter version of Bello the Cello.
Bello the Cello is about a little cello going to school on the first day, and he does not know what his song is. Mm-hmm. And it's the journey about him finding his song. My wild first day of school is just a book of craziness, joy, and creativity. And that's the inside of my mind, I feel. I just wanted to, when I wrote my wild first day of school, my mantra was, don't follow any rules, do whatever. And it struck a chord with so many children. that are apprehensive, scared about the first day of school. My newest baby is called How Grizzly Found Gratitude. And it's a book that really focuses on gratitude, but it's also about community, and it's about how gratitude can get you through trauma. And so if you're going through a hard time, and we all did after this last year, how, while our immediate circumstances, context might not change right away, being grateful for what is working for us can make that journey easier. Condensing that big, heavy topic into a children's book in a way that a child would understand is what How Grizzly Found Gratitude's all about. Talking about experiences with that book, I've reached out to the Oklahoma City Zoo, and they've said, come on and do a little video story capture with the 2 grizzlies that we have on site. And I'll bring that into the virtual author visits or the in-person author visit, saying, check out these 2 grizzlies. We'll talk about habitat, hibernation, bring that science conversation into it. So again, I'm all about the immersive experience. Folks can contact me through my website, booksbydennis.com. Hit me up on Twitter at storiesbydennis. On Instagram, I'm booksbydennis. On Facebook, if you're friends with Lainey and Brianna, I'm mutual friends with them. Message me. I'm just, a message away. I want to connect with educators, not just at a professional level. I want to get to know you as people. And thank you again. Thanks for listening to me ramble on for the last hour or so.
Oh, no, it's been a joy. And I just want to make sure, because I don't think we had a chance to mention it, but if I'm not mistaken, you were named Read Across Oklahoma's Author of the Year. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, so for 2022, I am the author designated for 2022 for Read Across Oklahoma. And that designation is given by the Department of Libraries for the state of Oklahoma. In partnership with Oklahoma City Schools. They do a big bash event at the Oklahoma City Zoo. It's unbelievable because I'm not carried by a major publishing company. I'm an independent author. For them to look my way and say, we like it, it was just, I can cry talking about it.
I just wanted to make sure we got that in there, because Bree and I were like swooning earlier. We're like, yay, we're so excited.
So huge.
It's just a big, like, Dennis, we see you working and we acknowledge your work kind of a deal. It's just huge. I feel like I'm being part of state history there, in a small way. So that's just huge. I love Oklahoma, and I especially love Mustang, Oklahoma. So.
Well, Dennis, we love you. We see you, and we're so grateful you've been here. And Bree, I know I speak for you. Thank you to everyone listening. You better check out his books because it's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we are grateful for this incredibly refreshing episode. So thank you so much for mixing it up with us. So until next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
If you enjoyed this batch of Lemonade Learning, please check out our website, lemonadelearning.us, for more resources. Be sure to subscribe today so you don't miss out on future lessons, laughter, or lemonade.
And if you're feeling really generous, please go to Apple Podcasts to submit a review so other educators know the value. One last thing, Learning and Lemonade are best together. So please connect with us on social media using the hashtag Lemonade Learning to share your story. Plus, we're always looking to give away stickers and swag.